Hello, ladies, gentlemen, everyone between and beyond. My name is Dylan. Welcome to the brand new indie action RPG, Death of a Wish. Now, I want to throw a few disclaimers here right at the beginning. If you are prone to seizures or motion sickness slash kind of, nausea from fast-moving, very colorful imagery, this may not be a good video for you. There are no flashing lights, however, there's a lot of fast-moving colors and visuals that may potentially trigger something if you are prone to those. So please, by all means, take care of yourselves and understand that I do not want you to have to experience any sort of health problems related to this video. I would highly recommend you look at screenshots for this game as a testing point to see if you can maybe watch the video without, risking your health. So please, by all means, check out screenshots, check out the, game linked in the description down below before moving to this video, okay? With that out of the way, one more disclaimer that I did get this as a request through Keymailer, so thank you to Keymailer and Syndicate Atomic LLC for the key. I really appreciate it. Death of a Wish, like I said, is an indie action RPG published by Syndicate Atomic LLC and developed by Me Less Than 3. Now, I don't know if that's a company or an individual person and like that's their screen name, but I will assume this was made by a very small team, just given what I have played so far. Now, at the time of recording, I do only have about an hour, 20 minutes in the game, but I feel like I have a really good grasp on the mechanics and the ideas behind it. I also got stuck at a certain point, but we'll get there. So this is what I would describe as kind of a Souls-light. Not necessarily a Souls-like, given there is a dodge mechanic, there's a parry mechanic, all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't feel the same as a Souls-like game. This is not an Elden Ring, this is not a Neo, this is not a Lies of P, this is not a Thymesia. It feels a little different because you don't necessarily drop your currency on death, you just kind of lose it on death. You level up at bonfires, you fast travel between them, but it takes a very interesting approach. So from what I've seen in the kind of, descriptions in the kit that I got and on Steam, you are a member of a cult, your name is Christian, and you decide, I'm done with this cult, I want to destroy them. So you set out to destroy the 4 pillars of the cult. It is very, very heavy-handed in its anti-Christian, anti-cult, speak, and its hatred of religion and the things that certain individuals or part of religious organizations have done, especially to young children in some cases. So if you find those kinds of things triggering, also maybe don't watch this video. But as you're seeing on screen, the combat is very colorful and very fast-paced. So everything has a really interesting art style where it doesn't look like it was meant to be, picture-perfect, crisp lines. These look like they were not, I don't want to say they were poorly drawn, because that's an inappropriate way of looking at it. They were intentionally drawn in a kind of haphazard way, like things are poking through the lines, things don't quite look like they should in terms of if we were to look at it, in the real world. But all of that is intentional. It creates this kind of chaos and motion through the imagery, and I appreciate the color scheme, like just the black backgrounds, so that everything else can kind of feel like it's alive. The not only the scenery and the trees, but also the way your character moves and the way your character attacks. There are a few issues that come along with that, but I'll get into that just a little bit later. So, like I said, as Christian, you go start fighting against the cult. You're going to originally kill your father for some reason, and then Samael kills your dad in front of you and is like, okay, we can rebuild the cult, we can make it better, and you're just like, no, I wanted to completely destroy it, therefore I'm going to kill you. By the way, Christian is one of the most edgy main characters I've played in a long time, and you can tell this game is heavily anime inspired, just based on its visuals, the way it plays, and how like aggressively edgy, and just aggressive in general, Christian is. So then he fights Samael, and the train they're on derails, and then he's saved by this person who's like, be careful of the nightmares, which are just the name for the creatures that you fight against, and I can't quite tell if they're like dead humans or what they're meant to be. So your basics for combat are, light attack, heavy attack, you can have your familiar do an attack for you, and you can charge both your heavy and light attack. The goal of every combat encounter is to break the guard of your enemy and then attack their health bar. Once their guard is broken, they will be stunned for a short period of time, at which point you can damage their health, and if they don't die, they regain their guard, and then can attack again. You have a couple options for dealing with attacks. You can dodge away from them, or you can dodge towards them and parry them. There is a perfect parry system, like you have to dodge at just the right time to kind of stun them for longer and do a follow-up attack that's even stronger. But the basic premise behind every combat encounter is break their shield, do health damage, get out again. Now, this is made more complex through the fact that there is physical damage and ephemeral damage. So physical damage is more related to the shields. So if you put up, say, strength, and you put up your physical damage, you are doing more damage to their shields, whereas ephemeral damage is usually more damage to their health bar. So it really, you kind of decide when you level up, if you want to set into health, strength, like mana, intelligence, if you want more to do more familiar damage or more ephemeral damage. This is also later changed by, they call it aria. I would just call it kind of elements or properties of your attacks. For example, you start off with soul, which is like holy physical damage, meaning your ephemeral damage is holy, so it does extra damage against cultists and nightmares. But then your physical damage is just kind of your physical damage, but is more physically damage focused, meaning you can break shields easier, but you don't do as much like health damage. And then you get, I can't remember what the name of the other one was, but you basically go from yellow to blue, which is more ephemeral, like more magic based. So you do less shield damage, but more health damage. And the other interesting thing is there are different attack patterns, like different attacks that you do between your light and heavy when you switch arias. And you can switch arias, at least between two of them, with the push of a button. And you are encouraged to switch mid-combo to kind of change up whatever your attack pattern is and keep that combo going, or keep enemies at bay. So I think it'd be a really interesting system, because it looked like there was about 8 or so arias to unlock, meaning that you would have, 8 to choose from, but you can only equip 2 at a time to really find your preferred playstyle. It offers a lot of opportunity and options in form of its combat through the aria system, which is then made further complex by changing out your familiar's form when using that aria. So I have not unlocked many of them. I unlocked one actually, but it meant that when I switched from the yellow aria to the blue one, that my familiar took on a new form, and it went from doing like a shotgun type attack to a laser attack, meaning that I can change what kind of attack my familiar is doing when I change my aria on top of changing my own attack pattern. So we're seeing, growing layers of complexity here. We're also seeing another addition, which is the cards they're able to slot into that particular choice of aria, which will also change and give them passive abilities. So some, increase your attack range, some will increase, say, the damage it does to a shield. So again, you're really seeing that customization and the depth of the combat skill trees, which are interesting, but there's some issues that we'll get into in just a little. Now, outside of these, and I know I'm hitting you with a lot, I do apologize, there's honestly not much of a story for me to go off of that I understood. You can talk to characters, and they'll spout dialogue at you that, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense, or is just, I don't care, get out of my way, I'm trying to kill a cult, I don't want to hear it. So like I said, Chris is edgy to the point of sometimes being insufferable. But the final skill tree I wanted to discuss real quick was the virtues. So the virtues are different modifiers you can slot in, which will again change up your gameplay. Like you can have one with a vampirism effect, which is kind of like Bloodborne. If you take damage, you have a short window to damage your opponent and recover some of that health. You can also have increased attack range or different small abilities. Nothing big, nothing to really change up your whole playstyle, but something to give you small advantages in certain areas. Now, what's interesting is these virtues all come with different costs. The more beneficial ones have a higher cost, and you need to find rosaries, again feeding into that religious iconography, to increase how many virtues you can have at one time. So you can use all of these tools to fight these weird red diamond triangle monster things known as nightmares, which I'm not gonna lie, even for the short time that I was playing, did start to feel a little repetitive. They did have some different attack patterns, like some were projectile based, some were more of like a sweeping attack, some were more of like a single straight on attack, but there was not a lot of visual variety between them, and it could be hard to tell at some points what their attack pattern was. If I was looking at a different version or different nightmare, I might not always notice or recognize, okay, they're going to do this particular attack pattern. And it just got kind of confusing, especially near the end of what I'm going to show you in the video. If you die, your corruption rate goes up, which is always shown in the top right corner, and there is certain events, I believe, as like you go up in corruption percentage, that will kind of dictate certain things. And I know there's an achievement for completing the event that happens at 100% corruption. I do not know what that is in terms of the event, because I did not get that far, as I'm not gonna lie, the combat started getting really difficult to tell what's going on. Like I said, it's a very unique looking art style, and I appreciate what it's trying to do, but I don't think it is able to communicate to the player effectively everything that is going on. But I will get a little more into that in just a few minutes when I talk about the big boss fight that kind of killed this game for me. So there are a few boss fights that I've done up until this point, which were fine, you know. Again, they're often telegraphed attacks that you dodge into to parry, and then you attack, 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 back off, attack, 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 back off, attack, 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 break the shield. Okay, now you're doing health damage because they're stunned, and then wait for the shield to come back, rinse and repeat. So it's an okay system. What I think makes it more interesting is the fact that health does not regenerate on its own. You either need to find a health, like essence item, that's basically like, here's a heal, but it's a consumable, or you need to use the rewind mechanic that you get just a few minutes into the game. Now, this rewind mechanic means that when you use this item, which is a consumable, you rewind to the beginning of that encounter. So a boss can be one hit from death, and if they're about to kill you, you can rewind, meaning you start the whole fight over again. This can be nice, but I felt it was a little too frustrating, and it almost felt like the devs, or dev, I'm not sure, again, if it's an individual person, maybe relied on this mechanic too much, because some of the boss fights feel like their difficulty really ramps up, or even just the regular encounters, because you have that option of restarting the fight. And I think the idea is you are intended to almost lose the fight at the beginning, restart to do it again but better, and maybe restart a second time, again, do it again but better. Now, you only get 5 rewind items, but they do replenish when you rest at a bonfire. So there's that, you know, balancing mechanic. It's kind of like an Estus flask, but doesn't really work the same. And it's not my favorite. It's an interesting idea, but I don't think it's executed properly with the way the enemy encounters work, because enemies hit like a truck if you're not paying enough attention, or if you get confused by all the visuals on screen. And it can be really frustrating when you're down to your last one and they just get, you know, a shot that you maybe don't agree with, and you're low on health. You're like, I'm just gonna restart the whole thing, and maybe you're fighting 5 guys again at that point, which just doesn't feel the greatest. So combat for me was hit and miss. Exploration was okay. You do have the, you know, you can pull up a little mini map, which was cool, and just kind of see where you are, fill out the map, and figure out where you need to go. It's really interesting because it's a larger world, but then you have smaller combat arenas, and the encounters in those arenas don't reset until you rest at a bonfire. Meaning, if you clear out the whole map, you can just run around the map however you want, do whatever you want, and no one will spawn. But the second you rest at a bonfire, all of those encounters have respawned outside of bosses, of course. So I kind of want to get to the last boss fight that really kind of killed this game for me. And I hate saying that because I think there's a lot of potential here, and I think it was a fun game until this point. So I got to the Deserter boss fight. This was also the first boss fight we were able to summon an ally. So I did that. I summoned Lily. We were fighting them. But it's when I noticed, and you'll see on screen, it's really hard to tell, at least for me, maybe not for you watching at home, but for me, to know what their visual cues are when they're going to attack, and to be able to dodge at the appropriate times into them to parry that attack, to then, you know, get in some good hits of my own. It did not feel good, and this is where I didn't quite start getting a headache, but I didn't feel good about the combat. And I tried it again off camera. a few times for like a good 15 minutes, and I was just getting frustrated because I was dying. And then I turned down the difficulty to... I turned down the punishment difficulty to... I turned down the sin difficulty to easy. This game, by the way, separates difficulty into 2 ways. So you can nerf or empower the enemies through the sin difficulty, whether easy, medium, or hard, and you can kind of, lower your health, raise your health, or stay middle based on the punishment difficulty. So it's really interesting. You can decide between weaker enemies or stronger enemies, and even a weaker or stronger version of yourself, meaning that you can really tweak the difficulty in your favor, which is nice. But even when I turned down the punishment difficulty, even when I turned down the sin difficulty to easy, I was able to get him to his second health bar, almost down, but he would kill me every time in that kind of second phase because he got so aggressive, and it was so hard for me to tell where he was attacking, when he was attacking me versus when he was focusing on Lily, and just what was going on screen. I think the art style does get in the way of kind of visual representation and visual accuracy in terms of being able to read everything on screen and understand what's going on at all times. So I don't think that this will be an easy fix, because I do think it is a core issue with the game. I don't want to look at it as a negative. I think this is just... it's not a me kind of game, and I love action games like, Dark Souls, like Devil May Cry, which is faster paced, but not quite this fast paced. But the problem for me was the visual clutter and the way that I couldn't accurately determine what was going on screen and where I was in relation to all of it, what I needed to do. It was just too much information for my brain to be processing and reacting to in a reasonable amount of time. So honestly, I really hope this game does well, because I always like to see smaller projects like this succeed, but I do understand that for some people, this is going to give them a headache, or this may give them a seizure if they were to try to play it for prolonged periods of time. And for others like myself, you're just going to get to a point where the combat is too quick and too chaotic to keep pace with, and you're going to fall off of it. So I hope if you've watched this video and you're like, oh man, that looks so cool, I can't wait to get it, it's available on Steam right now. I will leave the link in the description down below. Please go and pick it up. Please leave a good review if you enjoyed the game. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about the game, because I'm really curious to see how this sits with you versus how it sat with me. And even Kat, I showed her just a picture by Google searching it, and of the gameplay. It was giving her a headache to try to figure out the visual acuity and everything that was going on. So please, if I've given you a headache, I am very sorry. Do let me know kind of how you process these visuals. Do these make sense to you? Are you able to read them? Or is it like me, where you just get really confused and overwhelmed by everything happening? Anyway, with all that being said, thank you once again to Keymailer and the dev for giving me a key. I really appreciate it. I hope the game does well, and I hope to cover more smaller indie titles in the future. With all that in mind, thank you, ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond for being here. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.